Save versus Nerd Rage. Age of Rage.
Warning! Save versus Nerd Rage may not be suitable for all listeners. The reason for this is we tend to curse a lot. If you don't like that sort of thing, you probably should walk away right about now. You're still here? Alright, let's do this.
Welcome one and all to Age of Rage. What is Age of Rage, you ask? Well, it's a spin-off show of Save vs. Nerd Rage. What is Save vs. Nerd Rage? There's a lot of questions in the beginning of this thing. So, what is Save vs. Nerd Rage? Well, Save vs. Nerd Rage is our nerdy, geeky show, and specifically we do not talk about anything related to politics or anything controversial in any way, shape, or form. We just like to have fun and talk about happy, fun stuff that's funny, things like that. We don't really dig into the deeper issues that exist in our world. So, the crew here, me, Double Nix, Scott Zabohm, and Uncle Z, we decided to come together and make this new show, which is all about dealing with social and political issues. We're going to do our own little fun spin on that. We're going to have some fun, reading articles and tearing them apart, looking at world events and trying to make them as humorous as possible while still dealing with them in a serious way, but putting that funny spin on it. We don't want to discount the seriousness of some of these issues, but in order for us to talk about them, we got to have fun with them. Because otherwise, the world is way too damn depressing right now. There's too many things going on where you just want to cry. And we want to make that part fun. Or try to, at least. So, we're going to all talk a little bit about ourselves. I don't know who wants to go first, but whoever wants to go for it, go for it.
Hello, this is Uncle Z coming to you from the Bargain Basement Studio in St. Louis. I don't care if you know where I live. Basically, I was brought into the show. I'm the latest addition to the Hive Mind Collective and Save vs. Nerd Rage podcast and the Age of Rage. Basically, I was brought in for my scathing sense of sarcasm and humor, apparently. I don't think I'm that funny. I'm being serious most of the time. It really surprised me that they invited me in. I'm really grateful for it, but I decided to embrace it like an alcoholic in a room full of cobras. Now, as far as my politics, I can care less about the right or left. I care about what's right or wrong, and it's my goal to try and bring some horse sense to things. There are no sacred cows to me. It's all tasty meat. Even if it's something that might be sacred to me, I will still skewer it. To me, I just want people to have a little common sense, and hopefully I can point some of that out. I like to consider myself a moderate, which is kind of funny because I'm a military brat who grew up in a third world country during Reagan's Cold War era. So, how you get a moderate out of that, I have no idea. I hope you enjoy the show, though.
I am the man known as Double Nix. Nix for short, or D, or Nixadoodle, or whatever you want to call me. For those who haven't heard the intro of the Save vs. Nerd Rage show, I'm a computer guy, blah-blah-blah, blah. I have a wife and kids. Having kids has given me a different view and perspective on a lot of these issues, helped me refine my positions on some things. I'm one of those guys that recognize the need for flexibility whenever you consider any kind of social or political issue. I'm not one to hold hard and fast to some idea when new data presented comes along and goes against my previous position. I think it's very important to adapt and to adjust as new information comes out. I think that is a primary problem that goes on today. We stick too hard to our guns and we want to be part of a club. You'll find that kind of consistent theme in my discussions of an issue. I will often identify factions within a certain issue or group of issues or regarding some policy or something like that. The polarization of positions today is one of our biggest problems in the United States, and I think it does happen to a lesser degree in other parts of the world. Yes, I said lesser. I know that sounds crazy. In some places of the world, yeah, there's more polarization, but for the most part, I think here we have a huge problem with that. My political leanings are definitely social liberal. For me, the evolution of science and data is very important to me. I think that data should be presented first. I think everyone involved on either side of the issue should analyze that data, try to poke holes at that data, and based off that data, make a decision. You're going to hear me talk about data. You've already heard it like 16 times in this past 30 seconds. That's how important it is to me. Information is what we should base our decisions on. It should not be, a belief. I'm probably the most leftist out of all of us, but in some ways I can be very centric. I really don't go to the right very much, but you'll find that out in time. So I think I've wasted enough time with my insane ramblings here. Let's pass it off to the next person. Go!
And I am Scott Zaboam. Now, The Age of Rage is a brand new show. This is a spin-off of Save vs. Nerd Rage. In our main show, Save vs. Nerd Rage, we talk about a lot of topics that, well, to be honest, don't really matter. In Age of Rage, we're trying something a little bit different. We are experimenting with some different subject material. We are touching on some different topics which we would normally avoid because they're controversial or they just don't fit with the theme of the show. Subjects on Age of Rage are going to be much more wide open. We're going to touch on religion and politics and social commentary. But why exactly are we making this podcast? What could I have to offer that's not already being said by a lot of other shows? Well, it's not that we're trying to do something completely unique. We are trying to offer a voice to some points of view that are not being represented, but that's a small part of it. We're in this really to, I know why I'm in it, but I'm not going to explain why I'm doing this because a much wiser man has already explained this for me. So I'm just going to read something. This was a speech given by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. This was given at a college commencement. And the name of this speech is called Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. And I'm going to just read a few excerpts from it. Now, I cannot obviously do Dr. King justice in my delivery. So I'm going to simply throw this out there and do it as best as I can. Quote, I would like to use as a subject from which to preach this morning, remaining awake through a great revolution. The text for the morning is found in the book of Revelation. There are two passages that I would like to quote in the 16th chapter of that book. Behold, I make all things new. Former things are passed away. I am sure that most of you have read that arresting little story from the pen of Washington Irving entitled Rip Van Winkle. The one thing that we usually remember about the story is that Rip Van Winkle slept 20 years. But there is another point in that little story that is almost completely overlooked. It was the sign in the inn from which Rip went up in the mountain for his long sleep. When Rip Van Winkle went up into the mountain, the sign had a picture of King George III of England. When he came down 20 years later, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. When Rip Van Winkle looked at the picture of George Washington, and looking at that picture, he was amazed. He was completely lost. He knew not who he was And this reveals to us that the most striking thing about the story of Rip Van Winkle is not merely that Rip slept 20 years, but that he slept through a revolution. Why, he was peacefully snoring up in the mountain. A revolution was taking place that at points would change the course of history, and Rip knew nothing about it. He was asleep. Yes, he slept through a revolution. And one of the great liabilities of life is that too many people find themselves living amid a great period of social change, and yet they fail to develop the new attitudes, the new mental responses that the situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution.
Age of Rage.
Three of us got together recently and discussed the topic of Iranian hackers, and I thought that you might enjoy eavesdropping on our conversation a little. So,
I don't care if it's called Iran. It's called Iran, because I want to make as many flock of seagull jokes as I can, and I need that, so you're not changing that for me, buddy, sorry.
Okay.
I fought the urge on that one very hard.
And I ran.
Yeah, exactly. I almost did that.
I'm not going to sing any more than that because I don't want to pay any fees, so that's all you got.
Yeah.
Alright guys, but on our side of the globe, told on an almost nightly basis about some threat coming out of Iran or another. And what is the motivation behind these telling us about these threats, and are they genuine? That's what I really want to get into here.
Well, in about the last year, I haven't read anything about their escalation of trying to achieve nuclear power. And I'm left with the impression that if they ever did, it would be like a 2-year-old who found his dad's handgun and waving it in our face.
I would
he knows he's got power, but he doesn't really know what he's got in his hand.
But even someone who is playing around with a little kid with a gun, we're going to use that analogy, he can still figure out how to pull the safety off and, pull that trigger. And yes, something could happen, but it's not going to be as devastating as someone with the knowledge and the ability. I think there are bigger threats, and the fact that we're focusing on this is just to give us a target that people want us to have as a target in our minds. I know it's kind of like a shitty thing to say, but, that's easy pickings right there. You're playing off the whole... it's the playing off the whole scare from 9/11. There's these scary, darker-skinned people from the other side of the world that are trying to kill you. It's the whole Team America dodge. Really well it is.
Yeah, well,
playing off...
If you look at it on a historic scale, with the exception of the Revolutionary War, America has been in the business of blowing up brown people.
That was the George Carlin take on it.
World War II is because Hitler was cutting in on our jig.
You could actually make a really good argument of that.
Think about it. Let's see. The war with Mexico during the 1800s, and then after Vietnam, we've pretty much gone to a Middle Eastern country where somebody's got just a slightly darker skin tone than us.
Well, Zach, it's hard to find a person with a lighter skin tone than you. I'm
sorry, Scott, you broke up there?
I said it's hard to find someone with a lighter skin tone than you. Or than George Carlin, for that matter. George was a pasty dude. Everybody was more brown than George.
a lot taller than W.
Wait.
I was talking about George Carlin, but
Oh.
but yeah, it applies pretty well to applies pretty well to W too. Now that you mention it,
Yeah.
I would like to read something to you guys.
Sure.
All right, this is from the webpage that I just sent a link to you guys through Skype. It's from a news story on moneynews.com. Which dates back to November of 2012. So it's it's kind of older, but it's still something that I hear a lot, even in the last few months. Cyber terrorism is Iran's real threat to the U.S. by Peter Moses.
Okay.
And
Hold on.
No.
I'm cutting you back. I don't fucking know. Sorry. if you're going to talk about cyber threat, right? Iran is not who you talk about. Yes, are they mounting up more than they did in the past? Especially after, the games that we played? Sure. Are they really a threat when you compare? Let's just throw China in there.
Mm-hmm.
China versus Iran in terms of a cyber threat. There is no question on it. Hell, I'll even go one farther and say Russia. Not Russia as a state, but Russia as the fucking, organized crime that run botnets and shit like that just to make money. That is more
Not
of a
just
threat
that,
than Iran.
Just vagrant Eastern European hackers. Look what happened with Target. They traced it all the way back to scattershot hackers all over Europe.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Target thing, and that's a whole other bag of tricks too. Because what is being reported, I hate to sidebar this, but what is being reported on the whole Target thing in the mainstream media is just the silliest thing. Hey, the guy who wrote this particular script and sold it, or whatever, is the one they're focusing, and they're writing a story about him. He made something, I think a 17-year-old kid, made it and sold it. And that's newsworthy? No, it's not. He wrote fucking code. People do that all the time. I was just doing it 15 minutes before we started recording. That is not a news story.
No, it's not. And the other thing, too, that if they're a cyber threat, our greatest defense is trying to chew through all the internet porn that they got to get through just to get to America.
No, I'm going to keep reading this. And you're welcome to interrupt. You're welcome to jump in at any time. In fact, I encourage it. But this article is amazing. And you'll see what I mean. While politicians debate the Iranian nuclear threat, the larger issue posed by the outcast nation isn't nuclear, but cyber. Numerous published reports claim Iran was behind a string of cyber attacks against U.S. bank websites and other companies. Quote. Now, there are a lot of quotes in this particular article. At one point,
Yes, there are. And what
there's a quote within a quote
published
within a
reports
quote, so I'm going to have to do some other character voices here. Before September 11th, 2001. The void.
Hey, you want me to take it from here?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Zach,
please
you do
pass
this.
the seed.
Alright. Before September 11th, 2001, the warning signs were there. We weren't organized, we weren't ready, and we suffered terribly for that lack of attention, said Defense Secretary Leon Panetta. The Associated Press reported, "We cannot let that happen again. This is a pre-9/11 moment."
Very nicely done. Thank you. The September 2012 attacks against the banks. I went a little Commander Sulu there. Let me bring that back a little. The September 2012 attacks against the banks that were 10 to 20 times larger than the run-of-the-mill denial of service attacks. More than twice the record for a cyber attack meant for a specific target, according to CrowdStrike, a security firm that investigated the attacks. CNN Money reported.
Alright, hold up right there.
Yeah.
Let's go back to something that Z said just, before I got taken off track with that beautiful voice about before September 11th. But the numerous published reports, I don't see any links to those so far.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't got to the bottom of this article yet, but still. And then more of the, what's 20 times larger than the run-of-the-mill denial service attacks? I want to see numbers. I want to see data. I want to see a link to this report, and I want to see other security researchers verifying that this report is accurate. I don't see any of that here. Just give me links. That's all I fucking want. Give me links, give me data, or shut the fuck up.
But you're missing the
Find
point.
at least 5 or 6 links in a 2-paragraph report on the HuffPost.
Yeah, it's not about facts though. It's about the drama. Now, I am an editor, and I edit, among other things, fantasy stories. And at one point in here, he uses the term, I think, a slew of banks. And he uses a string of attacks. And I wish that one of the writers for whom I edit were to say, a slew of orcs burst into the tavern, instead of writing 10 orcs came into the tavern. Peter Moses is doing something here that is beautiful. He's wrenching drama out of this. Is it appropriate for this news story? Hell no. But it gets even more dramatic as we go along.
Oh yeah, this is sensationalism all around.
So here's one question I have. I was kind of scrolling ahead to see this article.
Yeah.
It's specifically saying that Iran as a state is trying to attack us. But what? No, I don't see anything that says anything about this. This is just like a bunch of, hey, this happened. They totally attacked us, dude, and there was this one report that we're in our reference, but we're not going to link or anything like that. And this is totally happening.
Yeah, and what do you want to bet that CrowdStrike had a financial interest in this?
Exactly, Z, you got it. It's just like this silly. I mean, I understand. This dude should write fiction, straight up. He would be brilliant at it.
Yeah. Here's the other thing too that completely flies in the face of Iran's modus operandi so far. Iran doesn't do anything subversive. They want to embarrass us.
Oh.
They want to smear us in the public face, in the world's face. So they would immediately get on the horn with the United Nations and say, yes, we made this aggressive computer hack. We showed just how weak America is.
Guys, we know for fact, just to build up on what you just said, Z, we know for fact that the Iranian state-sponsored cyber warfare division, and there is such a thing, is incapable of policing their own networks enough that they can stop the protest videos from getting out of the country.
Yeah.
They are not even capable of policing their own networks.
Exactly.
Or else not willing to do it. And I see government officials on the cable news networks telling me about the imminent cyber threat coming out of Iran. I almost said Iran there. But thank goodness I saved myself.
It's okay, my Middle Eastern hooked on phonics got lost in the mail, so I don't know the difference.
So, then I keep remembering what a buddy of mine told me about when these protests were going on, and he was, as he says, running interference for the protesters who were trying to get their message out. He was basically doing hacker-to-hacker work against these Iranian government agents, and he was not impressed. And I tried to get him on the show to join us for this discussion, but he's microphone shy. So didn't happen.
Well, we'll just get him to write an article for the website, and that'll be that.
All right, who wants to read the next part?
Which next part are you talking about?
I believe we're underneath the editor's note at this point.
Yes.
Which is actually posted twice in this article. And it's the only link in here.
I love side notes.
A virus attack against computers at Saudi Arabian oil giant Aramco destroyed 30,000 corporate computers, over 75% of that company's computers. Iran is also suspected of masterminding a attack against Qatar's Rosgas and ExxonMobil subsidiary. Iran is trying to demonstrate that it has the capability to disrupt life in the West.
Well, time out. Z, we can't get confused about what Z is saying and what this reporter is saying and what somebody within quotes is saying. So you've got to do a character voice. We have to...
Here, I'll take care of the Iran one.
Okay.
Iran is trying to demonstrate that it has the capability to disrupt life in the West. That's Michael McDonald for you right there.
I was going to say, that was a very Toby Keith political pro-America song right there.
Actually, that was the best impersonation of Roger Cressy, Senior Vice President at Security Consultancy, Booz Allen Hamilton, I have ever heard.
He definitely sounds like Michael McDonald. I'm pretty sure of it.
All right. Read the next line.
What's up, Azima?
But hey, Daryl, in the next line, here we're going to have Roger Cressy quoting someone else. So you're going to have to do a character voice within the character voice.
I'm not on that level of character inception, so I'm going to pass it to somebody else.
All right, I'll give it a shot. Roger Cressy told CNN Money, "Its argument is, quote, I say, whatever you in the West may do to us, know that it will not be a pain-free operation." End quote. End quote.
Let's just look at this little two-quote paragraph here. It's pointless. Iran is trying to do stuff, and the other one is, hey, if you do stuff, we'll do stuff back. Let's carry on. What's up?
They make it sound like a second-grade schoolyard scrap.
Yeah, really.
I'm showing off. Oh, if you're going to do that, I'm going to do this.
Waiting for the "my dad is tougher than your dad" argument. That's going to be down here somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so guys, how do you feel about the economic sanctions? For them, against them? Couldn't care less?
They seem to be effective. I mean, they're not getting anywhere fast, obviously.
I'm not feeling that way. Economic sanctions have been used since Middle Cold War, beginning with Cuba, and it's never accomplished anything. Not by itself. It just causes more problems. I mean, how long have we been isolating Cuba? Generations. And it hasn't forced any political change. It hasn't changed any policies within Cuba. It just doesn't work.
Oh, and actually, I think quality of life in Cuba isn't that bad.
I really don't think that's the point of it. I really think it's about limiting resources. Point where you can't scale up quickly and become a real threat. You know what I mean? You know, if they're able to go out and grab all this technology and do all these things without any kind of restrictions in place, they could potentially catch up if they're really that motivated any place.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you make it difficult for them. You put obstacles in their way. You restrict their ability to get those resources, or you make the resources so costly to acquire, you're effectively putting them behind while you're always constantly going forward. You're just increasing the divide, and hey.
It does create a serious technology gap.
I don't know. I think that we're going out of our way to make more enemies, because the Iranians really do have reason to feel that they're under siege. If not literally, then in every other way. You've got the economic sanctions, you've got dozens and dozens of enemy military bases dotted all around the border, surrounding them everywhere except, like, on the water, where you had the U.S. Navy parked. And they're the guys who are being hit with the cyber attacks. That flame attack, which hit them, a year ago? That's actually some pretty darn scary code. Are you guys familiar with the flame?
Oh, yeah. Stuxnet 2 was them, so that was specifically for the Iranian enrichment, you know? And the intelligence behind that was very good. I'm going to give a big shout out to Security Now podcast that did a really good breakdown of how Stuxnet worked and what the code did. And the fact that, I mean, here's a simple thing right here.
I'm going to have to go back and listen to that episode. Go ahead.
It is really good. It is really good. But one thing, here's a little minor note that I think is just so important. One of the things that it did was it used the USB for a delivery device, right? But the same USB device would only use 3 times. Then the code would say, hey, I have deployed 3 times from this device. I'm going to delete myself off of this.
Ooh.
That is very smart. If you just overlook that and see, oh, that's cool, that's one thing. No, you're breaking the chain of trying to trace this thing back. And then if these things are being circulated machine to machine because they're trying to keep them off the net, right?
Yeah.
You're going to play this, round-robin game trying to track this thing down. That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. It keeps a moving target in a world where a moving target is really not that big of a thing. I mean, like, if you look at the way things are now, there really isn't like that kind of a moving target. I mean, yeah, code kind of moves and stuff like that, but usually a machine gets infected, it stays infected. A device gets infected, it stays infected. But this thing took itself off because it did not want to be detected. That's fucking smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would much rather be working with the Iranians who are willing to work with us being the West, than just punishing all Iranians, which I still say is not accomplishing much of anything.
No, I agree with that. Basically, you're talking about using the same subversive tactics we used to help the French on resistance during World War II, finding out who our friends inside the country are.
Yeah, and that's something we could do publicly, which would greatly help our PR in the Middle East. And we've been losing the PR war. We're still losing the PR war against the KGB.
Yeah.
And the KGB is gone. And we're still losing against them.
Yeah, but here's the thing too. There's been one time in history where that tactic bit us in the ass, and that was backing Al Qaeda in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation.
Yeah, we were. That's true. We were not choosing our friends very well.
We picked the person most capable of moving the hardware in and creating the resistance.
But
which is exactly why a lot of people all around third world countries resent the CIA in particular and the United States in general, because we, all throughout the Cold War and arguably after the Cold War, we propped up a lot of bad guys, some of whom we knew were bad at the time and some of whom turned out to be bad afterward, because Cold War, because reasons.
If my history serves me correctly, I believe Noriega one of those mistakes, and I think we actually cleaned him up, didn't we?
Yeah. Oh, Noriega, Saddam Hussein, the Taliban, even Fidel Castro. The CIA put Fidel Castro into power, thinking that he was going to make this United States friendly nation in Cuba. And then he went communist instead. And the CIA you could lose track of the number of attempts that were made to remove Castro from power afterwards. So someday I'm going to have to do a whole segment on how the CIA has never had a successful operation in the entire history of the agency. But that's a segment all unto itself.
We ought to just cover how to clean up our dictator mistakes.
That'd be a different segment.
Part 1 of a 32-part series, is that what we're doing?
But step 1 is stop throwing these boogeyman labels on places that don't actually deserve it. There are some jackasses in Iran who are sponsoring foreign terrorism. They're not the people who are being affected by the economic sanctions. They're not the people who are scared of all these fresh military bases and missile batteries along the Afghanistan border.
Yep.
And they're certainly not the people who can do anything about Iran's nuclear aspirations. But this is a comedy podcast, so Double Nix is going to tell us what it's like, and then we're going to get back to this reading.
All right. So let's talk about the military bases thing.
Okay.
Have you guys seen the meme picture going around of like, look, Iran, they're totally trying to invade us. They put their country right around our military bases. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
No, I haven't
That is
actually.
I need to look it up. When I saw that the first time, I'm like, not only is this fucking hysterical, this makes a huge fucking point.
Yeah. They're in Turkey, they're in Iraq, they're in Afghanistan, and they're bunched and they're pushed right up against Iran's border.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Another thing too. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there was an article years ago on theonion.com, which is a parody news site. And I remember the headline was, George W. Bush comes up with exit strategy for Iraq. We'll go through Iran.
Kudos to Headlogin for that one. Thank you for the laugh on the bed. I appreciate it.
Oh, that is good. Yeah. If we can find that, we'll throw a link up to it in the show notes.
Yes. Looking for it right now.
All
So
right.
we'll also get that meme, a link to that meme somewhere.
Yes.
We'll put it on the site when I actually get the site up and running, but whatever.
I am Scott Zaboam, but I want to tell you about another netcaster of whom I am very fond, a man who has been an inspiration to us here on this show. The man is Dan Carlin, and he has 2 netcasts of his own. Hardcore History, which surprisingly has nothing to do with porn, and a little something called Common Sense with Dan Carlin.
Welcome to Common Sense with Dan Carlin. For Russian, press 1. For German, press 2. For any Latin-based Romance languages, press 3. For English, sorry, but the show doesn't translate well to English. If you've ever heard Dan's voice, you'd understand that that's just common sense.
Voltaire famously said, "Common sense is not so common." Unfortunately, despite the passing of a couple of centuries, even in the modern-day era of information overload and 24-hour news cycles, common sense is a rarity. If you feel like a passive, befuddled spectator with the constant news updates and Twitter feeds, if you feel confused by the conflicting opinions and outraged by the shallow news analysis, Common Sense by Dan Carlin is the one place to gain some perspective and some common sense. You can listen to Dan's passionate, sensible, and eloquent dissection of current events, giving you the much-needed perspective. On the way to work or while being stuck in a jam, Dan Carlin's Common Sense leaves you feeling more alive, aware, and thoughtful of the world around you. That description was written by user R. Suvicini, but here is a little about what Dan does in his own words.
I always wish I could just have a photograph from some of these great historical figures from ages past. As I said, what if Alexander the Great had a podcast? Think of how well, we would know him compared to how well you're able to get to know a historical figure like that based on the biased and varied writings and translations that have come down to us. Now imagine being able to have podcasts from hundreds or thousands of regular folks from Alexander the Great's time. Think about how that creates a three-dimensional vision of the past that's simply unimaginable for ancient historians to look at. Well, our descendants are going to be able to have a very three-dimensional view of ours. That's one of the great aspects of this, and also one of the great responsibilities.
The music you just heard is From Here by Tanner Helland, which has been generously released with a Creative Commons 3.0 Attribution Share-alike license. More of Tanner's music may be found at tannerhelland.com. Dan's shows may be found on iTunes and for free download at dancarlin.com.
Age of Rage.
But here's another thing, too, I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about. So, we're talking about all these big mistakes that we did in the past, right? Put power in the hands of people that, we thought were supporting our cause, and they flipped on us, right? That really isn't an issue anymore. A, we needed to learn those lessons from the past. B, it's not an issue anymore because technological advantage, again. It's like, oh, okay, that's great. We supply you with all these things. Oh, by the way, we have nice, awesome little chips with a bunch of firmware, or little things embedded in the firmware that we can remote into them, and, oh, we happen to detonate this or do whatever, you know what I mean? We can build stuff into the technology now where go ahead, we will give you all the gear you want, no cost whatsoever. Don't fucking think about turning your back on us. Because it will be bad. We will make your life a living hell. We have GPS locators in every fucking device that you get. You know what I mean?
I just posted a link to the messaging part of Skype.
I see that. It's a link to the Onion.
But like I said, it's not an issue anymore. I mean, if you look at just look at the little catalog that came out with the whole, Snowden and what's this thing? You know what I'm talking about. The catalog for the NSA stuff, the stuff that agencies can actually buy. And it's like a catalog. This costs $30,000. It can be deployed in this area. It's like, they have the crazy names. It was another thing mentioned on security now. I'm going to give them a lot of shout-outs because they're fucking awesome over there.
Yes.
But the names in the catalog are hilarious. And the things that they can do are so fucking smart. Steve Gibson said when he was talking about these whole things, this is what taxpayer should go for. Because it's very targeted at single devices or single small geographic area or whatever. And it's very quiet. These things don't broadcast signal unless you point a device at it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very stealthy. These are the kind of things we need. If these things exist now, and this thing was supposed to be, I think this little catalog was from 2008, so we already got, 5 years on that? So I'm not really worried about it. We can support somebody. They should know if they cross us and they use our gear, it's not going to end well.
Mm-hmm. I'm skeptical that would work. I think that there are ways around that, like putting the gun in a microwave oven. But it would be worth trying. It'd darn well be worth trying. So we will call this the Double Nix foreign policy. Double Nix theory of foreign policy.
Superior technology always wins. That's pretty much it right there.
All right, I'm going to read a little more of this article. Iran's attempt to disrupt the West using cyber tactics is new. Until recently, most cyber espionage
against U.S. interests have come from Russian gangsters and hackers from China, which were not state-supported. Some elected officials and experts in the field believe this new tactic is unsurprising given the sanctions the West has enacted against the rogue Iran. Quote, if the U.S. is really saying that these attacks come from Iran, and if they are really attacking American financial systems, which is the most vital part.
Well, I'm not making fun of these people here. There are a lot of quotes in this story, so I have, for the benefit of the listeners, I gotta do this. It's so they know when Scott Zabone is speaking and when Peter Moses is speaking. And when it's Jarno Lamel, Director of Cybersecurity.
What the fuck is this? Okay. Have any of us been drinking? I don't think we should not be this slap happy. What the
It's not just the writer I'm worried about. I'm going to click on this link for the editor's note that's posted twice real quick and check this out. Oh.
Is there a way to message the editor and be like, hey, what the fuck is this shit?
This wasn't an accident. This is a video with dramatic music.
Oh, wow. I should have, really. I should have.
And the first name listed is Newt Gingrich.
Alright. Close that shit from orbit.
Yeah, I should have allowed my JavaScripts for this page. Alright, I will do that. So that I'm not left in the dust here.
Oh my god, that was craptacular. I mean, all I caught was, I didn't catch the actual news piece, but man, I've seen episodes of South Park with more substance.
Yeah, and later in the article, he does quote Panetta. So
Yeah,
we are talking about some fairly high-level U.S. government officials here who are saying the same sort of thing. It does not say whether or not any of these cybersecurity companies, and he misspelled security. I just noticed that. Whether or not any of these companies have any stake, any financial stake in this conflict. Whether or not they stand to benefit from any government contracts that are taken out for the purpose of doing anything in the name of defending ourselves from the cyber terrorists of Iran. And whether or not there are non-sponsored cyber terrorists, that's a whole different subject. That's a whole different can of worms. Alright, what did you find, Zach?
About what? Sorry, my train of thought derailed.
The video that you found.
I didn't get past the introduction. It sounded too craptacular. They used the terrifying instrumental music and flash imagery with bold words, but the first word underneath the headline, "This wasn't an accident," was Newt Gingrich.
You'd be like, was that an accident? Because I'm clicking off the fucking video.
Yeah, I'll have to get through it in my own time.
Are you?
And, for future reference, when we go to pick apart these articles, we should probably read the whole thing straight through and then pick paragraph for paragraph.
Oh.
Hold up,
But I love this whole article. I love this whole cyber terrorism as Iran's real threat to the U.S. by Peter Moses.
Oh, so do
I mean, it's like choosing the paragraphs is like choosing my favorite children.
It's like reading a comic book almost. I was serious.
Here, let's go back to that the paragraph. It's Iran's attempt to disrupt the West using cyber tactics is new.
Okay.
So it's a new threat, but we should take it seriously. We should worry about the new kid on the block that has no experience doing this shit, rather than the fucking people who have been doing it for years. It just says, until recently, most espionage, blah, 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 from Russian gangsters and hackers from China, which I just fucking said at the beginning of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we got to worry about these new guys, we have no clue what they're doing yet. Yeah, they can do some things.
The foils, that is, you should always keep an eye on every risk to yourself.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
Doesn't have to be a big eye. Doesn't have to be a close eye. But he's making out, well, you're right, he is making it out to be more than it really is.
Yeah, we should definitely watch them, but should we really consider them a threat? No, let's consider the real threats first and counteract those. Keep an eye on. If they start stepping their game up, okay. We take a couple actions and knock them down a couple pegs before they get to a point where they're really on a platform to take us out. Do anything really of substance.
Handle it
play
like
around with
triage.
Exactly. Alright, we should kill this fucking article.
Yep.
I got like 15 minutes left, so...
Yeah, I was gonna say,
we're over the 40-minute mark here.
Can we get like a gunshot sound effect when we decide an article is bunk?
I'm sure we can find that.
I'll tell you what, next time I go to the gun range, I'll bring a recorder with me. I think something in 45 ACP would be good.
That would be perfect.
Alright, so we're going to pledge to our listeners that we're going to do some follow-up here. What are we going to do, though? Are we going to chase the journalist, or are we going to chase the story?
Let's chase the journalist right now, because he sounds like a lot of fun.
You guys do that. I'm going to follow back these mentions of actual security reports and shit like that. That's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
So that's what I want to look into. Because if there's bullshit in there, I want to make sure that gets brought up, because it's just basically references saying, hey, this report said this, but we don't know what the report says. So until we know what the report says, we really can't trust anything in this fucking.
That's actually a pretty good idea. I hadn't thought of doing that.
Yeah. You know, on top of that, maybe we should keep a close eye on this website, too, because if they let one turd slip through, Lord knows how many else are in here. This is probably a gold mine of this kind of crap.
Moneynews.com. Yeah, there were references made here to CNN Money. So that's who I was assuming was the ultimate source, and Money News was just repeating it, but that's the detail I'm going to follow up on. I'm going to see if CNN Money ever actually reported this.
Yeah, quite frankly, we should be able to Google the name Panetta and speech at Intrepid Air and Space Museum and see if he actually said any of this stuff.
And if he was talking about cyber terrorists from Iran when he said it, because the quotes in here do not mention that.
Yeah, they don't specifically quote him as saying that, and they're saying here, according to the AP, the Associated Press.
Which,
while he didn't, wait, the sentence after that. While he didn't specifically point to Iran, watchers and experts all believe his remarks were meant for the Middle Eastern country. I could believe it was Santa Claus if he was that vague.
Really?
Yeah, and about the Associated Press, my local newspaper is chock-a-block full of articles that are credited to the AP. Who the fuck is the AP? Do none of these people have names?
Well,
did their mothers hate them that much that they didn't give any of them names?
I get the impression that the Associated Press is like a clearinghouse for articles for other news sources just to buy information from.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that. But do these journalists... But why is no one at the Associated Press ever held responsible for anything?
Because it's a nebulous cloud. That's the whole purpose. Throw whatever news you want in there, you interpret it however you want, whatever. This nebulous cloud cannot be held accountable.
So it's like the Sam's Club of news resources.
Pretty much.
No, it's the 4chan of news resources.
That's better. I was just going to say, it'd be Sam's Club if, like, customers were allowed to bring in their own products and throw them on the shelf.
But I love this because everything he said to this point was blaming Iran, and then he completely debunks his own article article when he says, Panetta, while he didn't specifically point to Iran, watchers and experts all believe his remarks were meant for the Middle Eastern country.
Okay, how?
That right there diffuses everything he just said almost.
It does, because what language do they use to make that determination? Oh, the guy with beards? Oh, well, that's fucking Santa Claus. Like you said.
I've got a beard.
They were talking about you, Z. You're the big threat, not Iran.
Yeah, I'm such a menace to society.
Mad hacking, bro.
Really. Like, I figured out how Google Hangouts work.
Hey, crash override. Did you get that reference?
Yes, I did get that reference.
I missed it. I feel left out.
The movie
serial killer.
Oh.
Wait. Crash and burn. Matthew Lillard. That is the guy who plays serial killer, who is also a tabletop gamer. D&D is his thing. Angelina Jolie was in it. Was Johnny Lee Miller, who now plays the American version of Sherlock. And that's all I remember off the top of my head. But it is a beautifully terrible, shitty movie, and everyone should watch it at least once to just, if you want to, totally nuke your mind for a day, there you go.
It was great, good, clean, fun fantasy in a time when not everybody was really aware of the potential for a computer. It really was. I mean, the internet was still kind of emerging at the time.
But still, okay, I can understand that argument, but how can you make that argument after that movie came out after Sneakers?
I didn't get the privilege of seeing Sneakers.
I saw Sneakers. I did not see Hackers. So I'm on the other side.
Sneakers is so good on so many levels. It just, it's just a good story with a realistic type approach. It's just, and it's fun. I mean, it's not going to be 100% accurate. There's still going to be movie stuff, but there's feasible shit in that movie. But in Hackers, it's like, come on, dude. That's not even close. But yeah, whenever I make a reference to that movie, the people who know the reference, I'm like, you're fuck cool. So you need to get out, cue that shit up on Netflix. That is your homework assignment.
Yeah. I would say, Hackers is kind of like throwing at the dartboard, hitting the wall, and saying, bullseye. That much sums up how accurate and realistic Hackers was. Like I said, it was good fantasy. Okay, so let's see. Where did we lose track here? If the U.S. is really... Is that where we're at?
We're not going to get through this article.
Oh, okay.
But, alright, let me close the article by saying, thank you, Peter Moses. This podcast is going to continue to follow your work. We are not going to forget you. We are going to keep following what you're doing because it is both awesome and we are not letting this shit off the hook. We are not letting you off the hook. We are calling you on your bullshit.
However,
and we're not dropping it.
Let's make him an offer. Let's make him an offer. Here's my offer to you.
Come defend your work, yeah.
Well, you can come defend your work, but if you don't want to do that, I understand. We will let you pick the celebrity voice you want to sound like when we read your quotes. If you want to sound like Woody Allen, we can do that. If you want to sound like Lil Wayne, we can do that. It is your choice. Drop us a message, sir. We would love to hear from you.
This week's music brought to you by MAFX at Profit Motive Media.